Right, guys, in this video, I want to go over exactly how I program for myself and my clients as far as developing really rounded 3D capped delts. So here you can see I'm doing overhead press. And just to get started, I want to say that overhead pressing is actually not necessary for developing really rounded delts. The front delts are mainly going to be, used in all pressing exercises, and the overhead press, while it does largely bias towards the front delts, it's really just not necessary, and it's really not what's going to contribute to that 3D round cap look that most people are after. That round and cap look is going to come from your side and rear delts. You can do overhead pressing if you do enjoy it, but it's not necessary, and it's just going to be hit by any pressing pattern that you do. Flat pressing, incline pressing, especially, and it's not something that you're generally going to need to devote a lot of your time and energy to. And that's going to be a lot more better spent doing side and rear delts. So my general recommendation for everyone is to really focus on lateral raise and upright row variations. Now, before I get this comment, upright rows are bad for your shoulder. I would really challenge that statement by looking at the angle of your elbow on lateral raises versus upright rows. If you actually look at it, it's very, very similar. And I really don't think that um, upright rows are inherently going to cause pain or injury, despite what some people might say, cough, cough, Athlean-X. There's lots of different variations that you can do with upright rows too that help you out with, being able to, feel less joint pain. But I think what's most important when you're doing lateral raises or upright rows is to really keep your arm in the scapular plane. You guys will see in the next slide where I'm doing my dumbbell lateral raises that my arm is actually not straight out to my side. I have a very slight bend, about a 45-degree angle that puts me in the scapular plane, and that's going to allow me to put more tension on my lateral delts and not really feel this impingement if I have my arms fully straightened. I think that's probably the biggest mistake I see on lateral raises, other than people just have excessive swinging. Like I'm fine with some body English that you can kind of see here. My general rule of thumb is number one, like it shouldn't look stupid, and then two, you should still be feeling lots of tension on the target muscle you're trying to train. So I'm doing lots of different variations. I could just stay with, doing machine lateral raises, but I kind of could get mentally bored. So in this exercise or this workout, I'm doing two sets of machine lateral raises for my side delts, two sets of dumbbell lateral raises, and then I'm going to do two sets of cable upright right rows. I really like cable upright rows because I find that my shoulders feel a little bit more comfortable because I can internally rotate at my shoulder a little bit better, and it just feels a little bit more comfortable, like you just see right here. And I'm doing mile rep sets. I have a video on this, but basically I'm going as close to failure as I possibly can within the 10 to 20 rep range, and then I am doing, basically having 2 to 3 deep breaths, and I'm going again for as many reps as I can get until it just gets to be I can't get any more or it's too uncomfortably painful. So that is really how I train my side delts. My recommendation is going to be doing about 8 to 15 sets per week. You can spread that out over 2 to 3 times a week of frequency. I don't want to do more than that in most cases, because if you go about three times a week, generally there's going to be some joint and connective tissue issues where you're always feeling like stressing your shoulder girdle. Your connective tissue can never really fully recover, and anything less than 2 times a week is just it's going to be really hard to get in the amount of volume that most people are going to need to grow their delts. And usually, if you're doing twice a week, doing 6 to 8 hard sets per session, and then if you're doing 3 times a week, about 4 to 6 if you really want to develop your delts. Now with rear delts, really I just do rear delt fly variations. Here I'm doing cable rear delt flies. You can also do dumbbell rear delt flies, reverse pec deck, and then face pulls. I personally prefer low to high face pulls because I feel like I'm better able to feel those on my rear delts, and it's like less of a lat pull down base movement. It's like I kind of found if it's like a high to low, I kind of notice it's turns into a lot of upper back, which again isn't a bad thing, but I feel a better connection with my rear delts and side delts. I think these are important muscle groups to actually feel on my muscle connection with to actually develop them fully. And same general guidelines for volume and frequency I said for lateral delts there. And I think that this the main thing with you just turning delts is just being really consistent with the volume, and being okay with doing a little bit extra on this. 18 to 15 sets is a wide range, but they can handle a good amount of workload and volume. um, Now, one thing that going along with the front delt note is about, oh, some people might say, well, if you're doing lots of rear delt work on your indirect work via rowing and lat pull downs, you really like need to do rear delts. And I would say yes, like these contribute a lot more to that rounded look than what the front delts really do have. And I found just in general experience, like they tend to actually require a little bit more work than the front delt does, and it's less sensitive to fatigue than the front delt. So really, this is really how you want to focus on getting rear delts and just those cat 3D shoulders. If you spend time doing this consistently and you get stronger over time, generally aim to add about. I really try to really add weight session per session on these. I just try to progress like block to block, because like the reality is that these are such small muscle groups. Like adding in like 5 pounds is a really big amount, but if you can just do that block over block, that's a really big increase that will definitely contribute to bigger delts. So hopefully that was helpful. If you guys have any questions about how I program for my shoulders, you can ask down in the comments below. But hopefully this is helpful, and you guys can apply this to your own programming, and you guys can see some better delt gains and actually finally get those 3D cap delts that you've always wanted.